Compound growth is a type of exponential growth in which the quantity that we are looking at is increasing by a given percent. This is different than the examples we've been looking at previously, which had whole number growth factors. So for example, we had a growth factor of 2, which showed us that we were repeatedly multiplying by 2, and that's doubling. Or a growth factor of 3, which was repeated multiplication by 3, or tripling. So for compound growth, our growth factors are not whole numbers. They include decimals, which show that we are growing by a percent. The form of a compound growth function is f of x equals a times 1 plus r to the x, where r is the percent increase. It's really, really important that that percent increase is written as a decimal. Let's go ahead and look at this piggy example. What a cute little piggy. So there are 15 pigs in my town. So just like regular exponential growth, my start value a is included in my function rule. So a is 15. The pig population doesn't double, it doesn't triple, it increases by a percentage. So it increases by 20% a year. So we're supposed to write a function rule where x is years and f of x is the pig population. Now, whenever we're looking at compound growth, we need to take the percentage and write it as a decimal. The way we write a percentage as a decimal is we divide it by 100. And the shortcut for writing, for example, the percent 20 as a decimal is we take this decimal and move it 2 places to the left. That means 20% is equivalent to the decimal 2/10 or 0.2. So my percent increase as a decimal is 2/10 or 0.2. And then my growth factor is not 0.2 or 2/10. If my growth factor were 0.2 and I multiplied my 15 by 0.2, that would mean I would have a lot less than 15 pigs after that first multiplication. That's not what's happening. My growth factor is 1 plus 0.2, 1 plus 2/10, which is 1 and 2/10, because my original piggies, they are still there. So that 1 includes my original pigs, and then the 0.2 is my 20% increase. So I'm going to go ahead and repeatedly multiply by 1.2. The 1 means that all my original pigs are still there, and the 0.2 indicates that I'm increasing by 20%. I can now write my function rule. So f of x equals a, where a is 15, my start value, times my growth factor is 1.2, to the x. Next example. You have $140 in the bank. You receive an interest rate of 5% a year. So for all of these examples, x is going to be years and f of x is going to be dollars. So start value, 140. And then I'm looking at a percent increase. That's what my interest rate is. When I put money into, for example, a savings account, I receive an interest rate much lower than 5%, but that's how much the bank gives me to keep my money in the bank. So I need to write this 5% as a decimal. So 5 divided by 100. Shortcut, move the decimal 2 places to the left. That gives me 5/100ths, or 0.05. That is not my growth factor. If I multiplied 140 by 5/100ths, I would end up with a lot less than how much I put in the bank, and I would be really mad. My growth factor is 1 plus 0.05, or 1 and 5/100ths, because I get to keep my original money, and then the bank gives me some money to thank me for putting my money in the bank. I can now write my function rule. My function rule is f of x, or y, equals 140, my start value, times my growth factor, 1.05, to the x. Next example, I have a baseball card originally worth $50, so my start value is 50. It appreciates, meaning it increases in value by 0.6% a year. Now this is a tricky one. Students tend to think that 0.6% has a growth factor of something like this. Nope. This is less than 1%, so it's going to be less than 1/100th. Using my shortcut, I move this decimal 2 places to the left, which gives me 6/10 as a percent is actually 0.006 or 6 thousandths. My growth factor is not that. I would be very sad. My baseball card would be worth much, much less after that first year. My growth factor is 1 plus 0.006. It is 1 and 6 thousandths. And now I can write my function rule, f of x equals 50 times 1.006 to the x power. Last example, I'm so fortunate that I have a house worth $400,000. So my starting value of my house is $400,000, and its worth goes up by 7.5% a year. 7.5 divided by 100, my shortcut is to move the decimal 2 places to the left, and that gives me an equivalent decimal of 7.5% of 0.075, or 75 thousandths. I had to think about that one. Now I need to go ahead and add that to 1, and I get 1.075. Again, my house is still worth the original amount, plus I'm adding 7.5% of that worth. That gives me my function rule. My function rule is f of x equals start value, 400,000, times 1.075 to the x.